All right, so we're going to do the characteristics of tissues. I'm going to start with epithelial tissue. There are different characteristics starting from squamous, which are flattened, cuboidal, which are shaped like cubes, and columnar, which are shaped like columns or just elongated. They're also simple, which means one layer, or stratified, which means multiple layers. So you can have actually simple squamous, which is one layer of flat cells. These are found in things like the chambers of the heart or the alveoli of the lungs. Then you have the stratified squamous, which is found in like the epidermis of the skin, the mouth. You have simple cuboidal, which is found in kidneys, lungs. Stratified cuboidal, which can be found in glands like the mammary glands, and can also be found in sweat glands. They're also found in the urethra, which I find interesting because within the bladder itself, they are actually things called the transitional epithelial cell tissues, which look kind of like the stratified cuboidal at first, but then as your bladder accumulates urine to accommodate the space for that, these stratified cuboidal tissues start to look more like stratified squamous tissue because they flatten to make the space. And then, so that's transitional epithelial tissue. Then there's simple columnar, which is found in the stomach, the intestines, also the uterus too. There's also the stratified columnar, which is found in the pharynx or the throat, as well as the anus. And then there is pseudostratified, which is really hard to tell in a microscope, for me at least, but this is found in the trachea and the upper respiratory tract. And the thing about the pseudostratified, it looks stratified, but it's not. It's just kind of have to look at the nuclei. They look like they're in like all these different positions that makes it appear stratified, but actually it's just one cell. So now I'm going to go into the characteristics of connective tissue. With connective tissue, I'm going to split this up in three, where it's the connective tissue proper, the supportive connective tissue, and also the fluid connective tissue. I decided to put it in circles so that way it's kind of like how you would view it under a microscope kind of thing. But connective tissue proper is separated into loose and dense. Loose being, one of them being adipose. Adipose is pretty easy to identify under a microscope. It's kind of like these sort of hexagonal looking structures here with a lot of space, which of course stores the fat, and the fat is really good for cushioning, insulation, energy storage, all of that. This is areolar, where the fibers are kind of shooting out into like different directions, kind of like a web, and it's very loose, as you can tell. Here, this is the reticular loose connective tissue, where it's a little different from areolar, where it's kind of forming like a kind of net around these cells here. And then there's dense, which is all these green are the fibers. As you can tell, there's a lot more green on this one compared to these. They're all going the same direction, versus dense irregular, they're all going separate directions. And then lastly, there is elastic, which all the green is there, but then the elastic I notice is very characterized by the black squiggly lines. So this is elastic. All right, so now we're on the characteristics of supportive connective tissue, which are cartilage and bone. So supportive connective tissue essentially helps with the strength and the structure of our bodies, as well as protection of our softer tissues. With this, these are the different types of cartilage. This is hyaline cartilage, this is fibrous cartilage, and this is elastic cartilage. They're pretty straightforward in the sense that you can see how they're tightly packed in between collagen fibers here, so fibrous cartilage, and then this is elastic, the wavy lines in between each one, so elastic cartilage, and then hyaline is like kind of spaced out, and then the ground substance is practically not too visible there. And then for bone, there is compact bone, which are all the osteons here really close, and then here are the spongy bone, which is this is the trabeculae, and then there are some osteons on there, and there's also red bone marrow in between. All right, so the characteristics for the last one of connective tissue, fluid connective tissue, which I'm not going to do too much of a visual here, but essentially blood and lymph, they carry a bunch of important nutrients all throughout the body, everywhere, which is why it is still considered a form of connective tissue. So now that we just finished talking about connective tissues, it's important to note that some of the organs they can find those in are the eyes and the skin. The next one that we're going to move on to is muscle tissue. So with muscle tissue, there are three little drawings I have here, three types. There's skeletal, smooth, and cardiac. And the thing about it is that with skeletal, you can see that there are striations inside of this. These are the white gaps in there. The nuclei are also on the periphery. With the smooth muscle, which is right here, there are no striations in there, and then there is one nucleus in each one. And then cardiac, it appears to be striated too, but just the bars are kind of twisted like this, and they're not as nice looking as this one, so that's how you can tell the difference between these two. And also the fact that the nuclei are not in their periphery like this one, and there's one nucleus inside of each one. With this, two organs that you could find these in are the heart and the stomach. The last tissue I want to talk about is nervous tissue. It's comprised of the neurons and the neuroglia. They're capable of sending and receiving electrochemical signals that give information to the body through impulses called action potentials. Now, these are the neurons under the microscope. To me, they look like little bugs or like little chips. Sometimes they're triangle shaped with little legs. I drew the actual body here. This right here are the dendrites branching out from the head of the neuron here, called the soma. Inside the soma, there's the nucleus and mitochondria. There's the myelin sheath. The axon's the body. These are the parts that extend to the other cells that it communicates with. And then all the things around it are the neuroglia cells. Neuroglia cells play a supportive role, such as helping with the ion concentration, helping protect the nervous system from infection, producing myelin. So they play a supportive role in these tissues. And also where you can find them is in the brain and in the spinal cord. Two examples of where you can find epithelial and connective tissues, and that is the skin and the stomach. So starting with the skin, epithelial tissues help with protecting the skin from pathogens, protecting us from pathogens, as well as protecting us from UV rays and protecting the skin from dehydration. The connective tissues help with the skin's strength, elasticity, and also being able to get nutrients through collagen and blood vessels. And then in the stomach, the epithelial tissue helps, it's a brick wall, but it's secreting mucus, but the epithelial tissue essentially helps form a protective lining, and this lining also secretes mucus, so that way it can protect from acidic digestive juices of the stomach. And then also, right behind the brick wall, I drew somebody supporting here, the connective tissues help with the structure of this lining, as well as providing blood through blood vessels to maintain the overall lining health, tissue health.